from Minnesota, here to tell a little bit about what she's seeing, how she's leading, and what's inspiring her right now. Senator?
Well, thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you, everyone. And I'm looking forward to hearing Secretary Clinton. I've actually been watching the 4-part Hulu series about all of her campaigns and her leadership. And it's actually been a really good thing to do. So I highly recommend it. I am here in Minnesota and have had my own personal brush with this pandemic when my husband got really sick and was in the hospital. And I really learned a lot from that and have been able to talk to people about that in a different way. Some of the people that I work with every day to try to get them to help people more. Our experiences included his test took 6 days and his oxygen levels were really low. And I had that experience of wanting to be by his side and hold his hand, and you can't do that with this disease. And it's one of the loneliest things about it. And as Randi knows from the members that she works with every day, and so many of our workers who are out there on the front line, they're the ones that are holding up the phones to the patients. Some of them literally die alone, except for the healthcare workers. And so to have that experience firsthand and to be able to talk about it has been an amazing thing. And to have my husband come back and we are here together and just had tacos is also an amazing thing. And not every story ends like that. And it's made me really devoted to working on this in a big way and thinking about all of the lost time when we could have gotten those tests, and the protective equipment that I know you'll hear from Randi Weingarten about would have made a huge difference. But we are where we are now. And since this is about people running and women running especially, and the enthusiasm that are out there, I want to give you some inspiring stories of leadership. The leadership of Patty Murray in the US Senate, who is the head Democrat on the Health Committee, who has been leading the way on getting that testing. She's from Washington State, so I'm able to see it firsthand every single day. The leadership of Speaker Pelosi, which you're well aware about. I remember in the presidential campaign, I'd always say, anyone that doubts that a woman could beat Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi does it every single day. And her leadership you're seeing right now as she and the rest of us push to make sure that whatever we do next out of the Congress also involves helping our hospitals and helping our frontline workers and doing something for our state and local governments. So I see that leadership. And then I see the leadership of extraordinary people doing just things that they weren't supposed to do, as I mentioned before. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things and showing that kind of courage. And you see it in our frontline workers, but also in the grocery store clerks. The fact that people of color are being hit by this so much harder than anyone else, I hope will be a moment for our country to step back and look at the disparities that we see every single day. And one of the things that I'll leave you with that I've been working on is leading the way to make sure that everyone's going to be able to vote this November. Because while you work on campaigns of so many great people, including, I hope, Vice President Biden, and as well as local offices, and while you run yourself, and as you look at the unity we're going to need as a party, and I so appreciated Bernie's endorsement of the Vice President and Barack Obama's incredible video today. As you look at all of that, this is going to be an election like no other, especially for my daughter's generation, for your generation. Because this is going to determine, are we going to do anything about climate change or gun safety and all those things we focused on? And are we going to bring some competence and empathy back to our government? This is going to be what this election is about. So I just hope you all get involved in every single way. And the voting work that I'm doing is about the fact that while Donald Trump got a mail-in ballot from Palm Beach, Florida, yes, he did, and he's done it before, and was able to vote from the comfort of his home at 1600 Pennsylvania, what happened in Wisconsin? You had people, so many African Americans standing in line, risking their lives with homemade masks on and garbage bags just to be able to exercise their right to vote. And so that's why Ron Wyden and I have been leading this bill, because they have vote by mail in Oregon, to do a few things. To bring vote by mail to every person in this country and break down these barriers, like having to get a notary to even get a ballot. 6 states do that. 16 states make you have an excuse. So that is about a lot of what we're doing and trying to get the funding. But it's also acknowledging that if we can safely vote by November, that at the very least, this is most likely still going to be hanging around. So we want to have polls open for 20 days in advance across the country, because then less people will be in the same voting location at the same time. And we want to train a new generation of poll workers and bring safety to those workers on election day. So it's I'd say a combination of things. And we're starting to get, Michelle Obama endorsed our bill, which was an incredible boost yesterday. And Stacey Abrams and I did a video together today about how important it is, and we're working to get the funding in the next legislative package for this. And I just want to let everyone know so you can bug your elected officials about it. And we're just not going to be able to change our democracy if people are denied the right to vote. So thank you for having me on, Amanda. I'm going to stick around. I won't have to take questions, but I want to listen, because it's that or clean up the dishes from the tacos. I think I'll stand with you guys for a while. I'd love to hear Secretary Clinton.
Amazing. I think we have her. Secretary Clinton, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining this evening.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you, Amanda, and everyone on this important evening, because I love the idea that we're joining tonight's edition of Front Row Seat at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty in our country and the world. So bringing people together to look toward the future, to try to figure out what we can do together to make a difference, and most importantly, to elect new public officials who will take up the mantle of leadership. And that's what you've been doing. You and Ross, from the very beginning, have made the point that there are lots of people who could do the job at the local, state, and federal level if they just were given a push and some encouragement. So I really thank you guys for your energy and creativity and leadership. The team at Run for Something has done an amazing job, and I'm a proud supporter of your efforts from the very beginning. And I loved listening to my friend and former colleague, Amy Klobuchar, who did just an amazing job in her campaign and is continuing to lead on important issues, particularly the absolute necessity of making it possible for everybody to be able to vote without suppression or purging or undermining or blocking or all the other tactics that have been used to try to prevent the vote from being cast or being counted. Now, tonight's subject, women's leadership, is certainly near and dear to my heart, and it's particularly relevant to talk about it during this pandemic. I suppose everybody on this call knows that nearly 70% of the frontline health and social workers around the world are women. And here in the United States, women make up nearly 60% of workers in low-wage occupations. We also know that women take on a disproportionate share of unpaid caring work. So this global health crisis and the accompanying economic crisis will have very profound effects on the rights, opportunities, and lives of women and girls here at home and across the globe. So we've got to do more to step up to solve problems together and provide the leadership we need to get through this, and to make sure that we don't let it happen again. We really have had so many challenges in our response, some of which should have been foreseen, some of which were clearly predictable, but unfortunately were not met at the federal level. I think we all understand that. So today, when you're running for office or thinking of running or running a campaign, I want you to consider some of the candidates that Run for Something has supported. Right here in New York, State Senator Katrina Robinson, came to the city to work as an ICU nurse in a hospital that needed her help. In Colorado, Representative Yadira Caraveo has returned to her day job as a pediatrician, helping to take care of sick kids. Representative Donica Rome in Virginia won a nationwide waiver to help feed hungry students. Florida Representative Ana Escamani, who you heard from yesterday, has been leading the charge in Florida to halt evictions and support college students who were left with nowhere to go when their colleges closed. These are just a few of the Run for Something candidates and office holders who are on the front lines today. I think we're all deeply concerned about this crisis, but let it be a wake-up call to all of America to work as hard as we can to elect smart, passionate, progressive candidates like the ones that Run for Something supports to help change the direction of this country. The stakes could not be higher. They literally are a matter of life or death. So thank you for supporting Run for Something. Thank you for running yourselves. Thank you for running campaigns that are going to be winning in November. And I appreciate greatly everything you're doing to lift up the leadership that we so desperately need. So thank you and enjoy tonight's conversation.
Thank you so much, Secretary Clinton. It made me so happy to hear her voice. It's such a delight as always. I think we're going to bring up all of our panelists now to have a conversation. As they join, as Marcia moves them, and you start seeing videos from the amazing people we have as part of our conversation tonight, I want to remind you of two things. One, to make sure you're dropping your questions and answers into the chat, rather your comments into the chat and changing your settings to all panelists and attendees. Two, if you have questions for our amazing panelists, whom you'll soon see on your screen, to drop them into the Q&A function. And three, if you joined the host committee for this week, if you're one of the more than 100 people who contributed to sponsor every evening this week, thank you, thank you, thank you. That means so much to us. We have a really incredible panel of women who are leading, some of whom have run, some of whom are supporting those who run, some of whom are activists, and I am so excited for this conversation. I'm just like still so verklempt. That was so lovely from both the senator and the secretary. Okay, let's do this. I want to start with the amazing Jess McIntosh, who you may know from her radio show Signal Boost on Sirius XM. You may know her from CNN, and you may know her from the Hillary Clinton campaign. Jess, first question I want to ask you. What women leaders are you seeing particularly step up right now? Which of the women candidates and politicians are you most inspired by and really, showing what leadership looks like?
Honestly, there are too many to name names, and I'm so glad that Secretary Clinton did that. She's just like the most generous politician, the kind of person that we should have had right now. It is so lovely to hear her voice, but it's almost painful because it would be so much better right now with that kind of leadership. Right now, I think what we're seeing is that women's work is being made visible in a way that we haven't seen before, ever. Not just the domestic sphere, which suddenly we're sharing with everybody, but that women are on the front lines. They are the overwhelming number of essential workers. 50 to 70% in some states of essential workers are women. And so it is the women who are carrying the economy forward and bearing the brunt of the crisis that we're feeling. It is also the women who have run since Donald Trump and won, who joined the ranks of women who were fighting before them, who are doing the work to make it okay for the women who are fighting on the civilian side, if you want to put that kind of a metaphor on it. So I'm looking at mayors, I'm looking at state legislatures, I'm looking at the local folks who are really feeling the pain the first. I'm listening to the nurses. I'm listening to folks like Randi Weingarten, frankly, who people who are talking to those workers and making sure that they're as safe as they can possibly be. One of the only bright spots right now is the incredible opportunity that we have, and that there are so many women who are able to step up and fill it. So it's tough to find those in this moment right now, but that's why I was so excited about joining tonight. Your organization is one of the brightest. So thank you for having this. Thank you for convening it.
Well, thank you. Randi, president of the Teachers Union, what's your community seeing? What do you think is the biggest problem, and what can folks on this call do to help?
So, you know, we're actually focused on like 3 things at the same time. And so number 1 is, you know, and it's so great. It's an honor for me to be with all of you. And it actually gives me a whole lot of hope when I see all of you and I hear both Secretary Clinton and Amy Klobuchar. But the bottom line is we have to do 3 things at the same time. We have to help really help fight for or make sure that we take care of the health and safety and well-being of everyone in America. And we see that in 3,500 communities that we're in, because we have 3,500 locals. So we're essentially in rural, suburban, and urban communities all across America. That includes all the kids, all their parents. And tonight, for example, we had right beforehand a teletown hall with the National PTA and 55,000 people on who were peppering the 2 psychologists we had on with questions about what they do. Number 2, we have to focus like a laser on the people who are protecting us, who don't have the PPE, who don't have the materials that they need, and they're risking their lives to protect us. And whether it's grocery store workers or whether it's transit workers or whether it's nurses or respiratory therapists or doctors, you think about all of them and how inspiring they are. And look, I was so mad that Donald Trump says last week, you know, where are these PPE going? They're going out the back door. And there's an ad that's on the chat room about nurses saying, what are you talking about? Just do your job, we're doing our job. But the third issue is, and I'm so glad Jen and I and others talked about this last week, how are we going to support and buffer all of the economic issues that are coming up right now, short-term and long-term? Yes, we need to make sure that we can vote by mail, as Amy just said, and we need to make sure that we vote for a different president. But what about this crisis is exacerbating every economic inequality? And how do we get the Congress and how do we get others to actually make sure that we can have food on the table for people, that we make sure that they don't get evicted, that they don't get, their mortgages don't get foreclosed, their student loans don't get discharged. So frankly, we're concerned about all of that at the same time. But it's women's leadership. Last thing I'll say is women's leadership is not about bullying and blustering. It's not about denial. It's about solving problems. It's about being caring, competent, and compassionate. Thank you.
Thank you for the work you do. I want to jump to another amazing labor leader, Ai-jen Poo, the president of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. You serve an entirely different community than most of the other women in this chat. What is the biggest problem you feel like your community is facing, and what can folks on the call tonight do to help?
Hi, everybody. First, I just want to say, hey, Amanda, thank you for having me in this incredibly powerful circle of women. I'm so honored and inspired. These are some of my favorite leaders ever, and I love Run for Something. Hey, everybody on the call, thanks for joining and supporting Run for Something, such an important, awesome organization. So yes, at NDWA, we represent the nannies, house cleaners, and home care workers who support our families every day. And they're mostly women of color and immigrant women. And before the COVID crisis, domestic workers were earning poverty wages, didn't have access to a safety net or pay time off or job security. And we were really focused on engaging them to be powerful at work and in our democracy to change all of that. And now in the midst of this crisis, they're in even deeper crisis. Most house cleaners and nannies have lost their jobs and their income and are worried about how they're going to put food on the table. One of our members last week described what was left in her fridge and said it was literally a few eggs, a half a carton of juice, and some bread. So food security is a huge, huge issue for us. And there are tons of home care workers and nannies who are still working, and they're a part of the essential workforce. and they're struggling to keep themselves and their families safe without protective equipment, without testing or childcare to support their own families. So we've been in crisis mode and really trying to address both how we protect the people who are working and keep them safe and supported, and for all the people who are not, the incredible financial devastation that people are facing. And we have launched an emergency assistance fund called the Coronavirus Care Fund. And we're super grateful because, and it's actually incredibly moving and inspiring because more than 85,000 people have donated and contributed, and it's allowing us to get immediate cash assistance to people who are in dire need right now. And it just scratches the surface of what's needed. We have to keep fighting at the policy level, as Randi said. We need to ensure that federal relief includes everyone who needs assistance right now, especially immigrants who are left out of a lot of the support that's being offered. So there's a ton to do, and you can support by donating to the Coronavirus Care Fund and definitely organizing and pushing our elected leaders to ensure that everyone is protected and is able to get access to the relief that they need for themselves and their families, and that we vote so that we can elect leaders like the ones who are on this call to lead us forward towards a real inclusive recovery.
Thank you for the work you're doing. I know Ross dropped a link to the Domestic Workers Relief Fund in the chat, but we'll make sure to send it out to folks, everyone on Friday at the end of the week. Christina Reynolds, the VP of Communications at Emily's List. I've actually a very specific question for you from someone in the Q&A.
Okay.
Brian Carroll notes he's involved in politics because his wife passed away from complications from childbirth. He wants to move the needle of women's healthcare to be more than just talking about abortion, because as we know, there are so many other components to women's healthcare and economic justice. What do you suggest? How can he help push that conversation forward?
First, I want to echo what everyone else has said, but thank you, Amanda, for bringing us all together, for doing this. It is, as I feel every day when I go into work, or now log into work, I suppose, this is something that gives me hope that there are people out there making a difference, and to get to talk to these amazing women is pretty fantastic. And you too, Ross. And thank you for everything that Run for Something does. I know at Emily's List, we are grateful to partner with you all the time. I'm biased, but I will say the biggest way to move the needle there is to elect more women. Quite honestly, we need more people at the table who don't have to question why men should care about maternity care, right? We don't, when you look at who has raised issues like our issues with maternal death, with the disparities in the statistics and things like that. The women are raising it first. They're raising it at all levels, and I'm sure when we get to Jennifer, she can talk about the great work they've done in Virginia when so many more women got elected. It is a great way to make sure when our representatives look like us, when they represent when they look like the people that they represent, and not just old white men. No offense if there are old white men supporting, great, thank you. But when they look like the people that they support and they have lived the lives of the people that they support, they do a better job. They get more done. They work with people. I mean, plain and simple, women pass more bills. They offer more bills. They just get more done. They even work across the aisle and bring people to them, which is great. And that's something that we need more of. I know watching what's been happening, I could not be prouder of the women out there, to look at some of the women governors like Gretchen Whitmer, but Laura Kelly in Kansas, who halted evictions pretty early on, which is something pretty progressive you might find in Kansas. But you look at some of the great work the women are doing, they're putting their heads down and they're doing amazing work. And I'm so proud to get to work with some of them every day. But that to me is one of the biggest things, is elect more women.
+1. That's a good segue to Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy from Virginia, a Run for Something candidate from 2017, 2019, one of my personal favorites, although I have no favorites. Jen, can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing in Virginia right now?
Absolutely. Again, I would also like to piggyback on what's been said. Thank you, Amanda and Ross, two of my favorite people on the face of this planet who've supported me since day one. Even when I was pregnant with twins during my entire campaign, they said, "You're going to win, girl." So I appreciate that. And so here in Virginia, we are working very hard. We had wonderful results in 2017, electing 15 new Democrats and 11 new women into the Virginia General Assembly, and we saw some progress. And then it exploded in 2019 when we brought forth more sisters to the table to have a voice and push things forward. So now that we have a majority and we have a historic number of women who have ran and won, you saw phenomenal things happen here in Virginia. So we were able to remove a lot of the politically motivated and medically unnecessary restrictions on access to abortion. We've made it easy for people to vote. We have Election Day now, a national holiday, same-day voter registration, repealed voter ID. I mean, you name it, we did it here in Virginia to make sure people have access to the ballot. We've done amazing things, removing Confederate monuments, to imploring things such as increasing minimum wage and strengthening labor and unions here in Virginia. So that's what happens when you do elect progressive, principled people, and you believe in them and they run for office, they win, and they stick to it and they get things done. And that's exactly what happened. So in Virginia, we are also the 38th and final state to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. And so I was happy to lead that charge and get that done. Even when people said it was a dead issue, it would never happen. Committee chairs didn't change. And, you know, I like a little challenge. And so that's exactly what we did. And we were able to get that successfully over the finish line. So that's what we've been doing here. And now what we're doing is, because I have filed to run for governor here in Virginia, my legislative hat has been taken off, and now it's about being a leader and an executive of the Commonwealth. And so leading the charge to have vote by mail, because we don't want Wisconsin here in Virginia. And it's absolutely absurd that people have to choose between their constitutional right to vote and their lives and the health and safety and welfare of their families and loved ones. So ensuring that we have vote by mail here in Virginia is something that's up. I fought to get grocery store workers considered essential employees, because I had a phone call with a woman and she said, you know, Jen, I have a 9-year-old. You all have shut down schools. She's too old for daycare. What am I supposed to do? And so that's when I leaned in on the administration and said, we need all grocery workers to be considered essential employees so we can get food and they can get services so they can show up to work. So that's what happens when you don't have a lot of people with lived experiences who may not come from a single parent household, who doesn't understand to have young children and struggle to pay for childcare. They never thought about that, right? But you do when you have people who comes from those backgrounds and have those type of shared and lived experiences. They understand the practicality of things and how things have to work and operate. Something as simple as getting people to work. So those are the things that we've been fighting for. And right now, the biggest charge I'm having here in Virginia is to address disparities of the impact of COVID-19. We have over 50% of testing coming back with no information regarding data points of demographics such as race. And we see throughout the country that African Americans and minority communities in general are dying at disparate rates than other individuals. So as the first public defender ever elected to the General Assembly, I'm also fighting for our most vulnerable Virginians, including people in prison, our prison populations. Because once it enters the jail, it cannot be controlled. And these are people who are sometimes deemed to be undesirable, but they're really returning citizens. And so if they have 30 days or less serving on their sentence, they need to be released. If they're serving time for a nonviolent offense, why jeopardize people's lives, right? For the principle, just allow them to come home so they can shelter in place. And of course, our undocumented immigrants. People don't want to say it, but I'll say it. Our prison populations, undocumented immigrants, and African-American communities and minority communities are being ignored and neglected. So I am picking up the charge here in Virginia to make sure that I am the voice for those communities and ensure that they are tested, that they are treated, and they are protected like every other Virginian here. So thanks.
For what it's worth, I said it on day one, Jennifer's going to be governor of Virginia one day, and I am so excited to be right in 2021. I want to jump to Mayra Macias, the Executive Director of Latino Victory Project. Mayra, how has your day job changed in the last month? What's your number one priority right now?
Well, first, I love hearing former candidates, now elected officials speak, because it is a reminder of why the work that we do at Latino Victory and at all these organizations is critical. So thank you, Amanda, Ross, for putting this together. Thank you, Delegate, for the inspirational words. Thank you for uplifting undocumented immigrants and communities of color in our prison population. Day to day, one, I realize how much time I save by not having to put on makeup and do my hair. But, you know, we have really shifted from focusing on our own organization and really focusing to support our candidates, because at the end of the day, our candidates are the ones who are suffering the most in terms of our infrastructure, because they're the ones that are supposed to be speaking of voters day to day. They're the ones that are having a hard time raising funds right now. They're the ones that are navigating, managing a family while also running for office for the very first time. And one of the things that I think is so critical in organizations like Run for Something and Latino Victory is that so many of our candidates are running because they have these conversations with people on a day-to-day basis, and they're motivated by those conversations. They're motivated to be at the table and enact change that they currently don't see. And what happens when you take that integral part of campaigning away from them? And so we've been having conversations with our candidates to figure out ways to be supportive, but also to really use this opportunity to be innovative about the ways that we're still centering people in campaigning. And we have to remember, as the delegate said, there are a lot of people that are getting ignored in this pandemic. And when we think about, you know, the dire needs on a day-to-day basis, sometimes campaigning seems or feels so insignificant. But I think now more than ever, it's clear that we need responsible leadership, that we need leaders that care, that understand the needs of folks who are being neglected, folks who are being ignored, folks who aren't being taken into account in stimulus packages. And so the biggest change for us is that we have shifted from thinking about our long-term programming, and by long-term I mean in 200 days when we're trying to get Donald Trump out of office, but thinking about what can we do now to best service our candidates. And I'll share an example and something that brought me and the team at Latino Victory so much joy. One of our candidates, Candace Valenzuela, who's running for Congress in Texas, was struggling to meet her end of the quarter goal. And we decided that we wanted to venture and throw a virtual fundraiser for her. And mind you, we'd never done this before. A lot of our events are in person, and this was a new thing for all of us. And what I loved so much about that fundraiser, one, we were able to help her meet her budget gap. Two, it allowed for a community to come together that might not necessarily be able to go support her in person in Texas. It allowed for folks like my friend Julie, who's on the call. And Julie, I'm sorry if I'm going to put you on blast, but Julie is a full-time career woman, full-time mom. And she said, normally I can't go to events like this after work, but now I can. And I brought my daughter with me. And so it's allowing a lot of women to bring their full selves to our work, right? We don't have to worry about putting on makeup or doing our hair. I've been using a lot of my t-shirt collections that I normally don't get to wear. But what was so beautiful was that Candace, who is a mom of 2 kids, young kids, came to the fundraiser with a toddler in hand, and was answering policy questions about education while holding her toddler. And I think if that is not the most quintessential and emblematic image of why we need women of diverse experiences at the table, who else understands the plight of a mother right now, of a working mother, than someone who's campaigning and literally holding her child while raising money on a virtual call. And so I think our day-to-day has changed for the better in some ways, because we're really able to focus and hone in on how we can best serve our candidates, who at the end of the day are what is going to make the difference, 4 years from now, 2 years from now, a couple months from now, if something like this ever happens again.
Thank you. It was a beautiful story. Last but certainly not least, I want to introduce Piper Perabo, an activist, an actress, wonderful friend of Run for Something. Piper, we have a whole bunch of folks in the chat, including, I want to make sure I get this right, Garima Verma, who wants to know, for people not in politics already, for people who are brand new to this or newly excited, what advice do you have for them to get involved, and in particular to help elect more women?
Thanks for that question, and thanks so much for having me, Amanda. I'm so honored to be with all these amazing women and leaders. I'm so inspired just to listen to you guys talk and the ideas that you have. And I've been thinking a lot while you were talking about how regular people can help. And I think now more than ever, as campaigns are moving online, text banking and phone banking is going to become very important. And I know, I mean, I'm still new to politics and sort of getting involved in activism. And so I was really nervous in 2018 when I started door knocking for the first time, just was like, nervous. And so text banking and phone banking is the perfect way to kind of dip your toes in, but really make a difference. And especially if you're doing it for a local candidate, state legislature, or down ballot, you can make a big difference by just putting some time that you have in these days when some of us are not at work to do text and phone banking. So you can look for candidates that Run for Something supports that are in your area and reach out and see if you can help. And to echo what Mayra said, also, I did like a virtual happy hour for a candidate that I really support. And we invited these people and we made it so you didn't have to donate, because I think some people, that just being able to donate is not something that is on the budget list right in this moment. But we wanted to make sure that they were part of the conversation. And so we did a kind of Zoom happy hour like this where the candidate could answer questions in the chat room, and I gave like a little introduction. But what was so cool was so many people came, and like this call here, you could see everybody's house and their kids, and some people like brought a beer or whatever. And everybody's name was on the bottom of the window. And so I don't think I would have met that many people from the town where I grew up. And, you know, there's their husband and there's their dog and there's their family. And it made it so much more feel like a neighborhood experience, this kind of Zoom fundraiser. And it doesn't really cost the candidate very much money. And so we could put the money that we raised towards the race instead of like, you know, banners or like white wine or something. So I just think there's a lot of ways to get involved right now to support a candidate that you really care about. And if you're a little nervous about it, texting and phone banking or virtual happy hour is really fun and not too scary.
I love that. Saving money on cheese plates is just... Randi, we have a couple folks in the chat who have some questions. Cindy Toledo, who's an AFT member, Kaylee Truman, who comes from a union background, Jackie Craig, who got into politics because of the mess in public education.
Yeah.
All sort of similar questions here, so I want to jump in one. How do we get more teachers and educators to run for office and prioritize education?
So we actually, first off, you are helping us get more people to run for office, so thank you, props to you. You know what, we encourage our members to run. This year, before COVID, we actually had 5 regional meetings where we brought in leaders for an intense, you know, basically 36 hours of time. 2 of the 7 of them got canceled because of the physical distancing. We talked to over, I would say, half of our leaders, really encouraging them with the nuts and bolts. When you do that, and I think Piper was, you know, in talking about this too, when you really connect with people and make it doable and realistic to run and help support people in that run, not just with money, but with people and things like that, that the more people who then run, it begets more people to run. So we had 300 members run in the 18 cycle, not labor members, not, you know, teachers, but 300 of our members. We supported every single one of them. 60% of them won. And so I would say to anybody on the phone, if you're a member of a labor union, all of us in labor are trying to support people to run. If you're a member of my union, we would love you to run, and we will do everything we can to support you, and we will work with Run for Something to do that as well. It's really important for people's, for real people that sense of reality, that sense of what happens on a day-to-day basis to come out. And that is what actually gets trusted by people in communities to say, she has my back and I trust her.
That's so important. And if you are a teacher and you are a member of AFT, or really anyone you're interested in running, we are here to help you too. Jen, Appy Loisel, who works at a labor union here in New York, wants to know if you know of any domestic workers in office now that we can support, or of folks who are prioritizing domestic workers who they can support.
Oh, that's such an awesome question. So somewhere I think watching is our amazing political director, Jess Morales-Roquetto, and she is amazing at all things. And one of the things she's scouting for is precisely that. Both people who were domestic workers and have run for office and have won, or people who are interested in it. And so she would be a good person to bring into this conversation. And she happens to also be the partner of the amazing co-founder of Run for Something, Ross. Shout out to Ross. Ross, thank you for your leadership. And yes, Jess is the one to talk to. And with her leadership, we're going to make sure domestic workers all over the country know they can run for office and will get support.
Amazing. And we're going to be here to help. I want to toss the next question. We've had a bunch of people ask, including Julie Von Hafen, to Jen, Christina, Jess, and Mayra in that order. So unmute yourselves as accordingly. Biggest challenge for women candidates, most generally and in particular right now. And Jennifer, if you want to answer as your biggest challenge as a woman currently serving.
Absolutely. That's a really great question. So the hardest part about being a woman running for office is the fact that you're a woman, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. The training that I received from wonderful organizations like Run for Something, Emerge, Endless, all of these organizations that's there to support us and prop us up. One of the great things is that they have real and raw conversations with you about what to expect and what your reality will be. So for example, it matters our heel height. It matters whether you're showing your shoulders or not. The colors that you wear, you will be criticized. Our time is taken up more because we have to wear makeup and we have to layer and we have to primp and be pretty and smile nice and all of these things. So, you know, it's just hard, period, being a woman. And then you add in the fact that you're a wife. You add in the fact that, you know, for example, me, I'm a mother of two-year-olds. And my husband and I decided to use the pandemic to potty train. And it is absolutely not recommended because they come and, you know, they grab hold of your leg, they don't let go, and you're dragging them across the room while you're doing call time. I mean, that's just our life. That's how we live. And it's difficult. It's so much more difficult. I wish people would be honest about how it's more difficult to run as a woman than it is a man, period, unequivocal. Even when I was pregnant in my delegate race, I was outraised 4-1. I announced the last week of January 2017. My husband and I became pregnant, of course, on Valentine's Day. And I was pregnant during my entire campaign. So to hear these men complain about knocking doors in 98-degree heat, and I'm thinking to myself, like, well, try doing that with morning sickening, swollen ankles and creating 2 lives inside of you, and then let's talk. But like, that's our reality. That's what happens. That's what it means to be a woman who's running for office and a candidate. And so you have to become an expert at compartmentalizing. You have to become an expert at time management and organization. And that's one of the most difficult things about being in this climate now, because I thought about it and I'm like, why do I feel more busy now? Not just because I'm running for governor, but literally I feel more busy now than I did before. And it's because I could drop the babies off at daycare, mommy duty stopped. Then I can go to my job as a criminal defense attorney, focus on that. Then I could campaign, and then I pick the kids up, and then mommy duty starts again. Now, all of my worlds have collided. And so I am campaigning while cooking dinner, you know, while homeschooling, while, you know, trying to get my clients out of jail. And all of these things are happening at the exact same time. And so that's a reality. And that's a reality as a candidate campaigning through a crisis. And so once you're aware of that and you know that and you understand the challenges that's going to be presented, you know, at the end of the day, you have no other choice but to push through and to lean on other fantastic organizations like Run for Something, who actually gave me the wonderful idea of doing a bus tour throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia to energize and excite people about the Equal Rights Amendment. So Ross and Amanda will be very coy, but it's actually them who helped play a large part in us passing the Equal Rights Amendment, because that was their idea, and help energize and excite people about that. But when you have organizations of people who are vested in you, who want to see you win and see your policies pass, they make it a lot easier. They make this, insufferable thing that much easier. But in no way is it easy. No way is it kind. No way, every day is different. But if you are thinking about doing it, I say just do it. And you'll find those organizations, those peoples, and those mentors who will support you and be there for you to help you get through the hard times. And I can tell you, when you get your wins, they feel so good. They feel amazing. They're few and far in between, but when you get them, you see the millions of people of lives that you've affected and improved. You see the children that you inspire. Because if you don't run, just keep this in mind. For little girls out there, it's hard to be what you can't see. And if you're not stepping up to the plate and doing this, then what kind of message are you sending, right? And if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So that's what it means to be a woman right now running. That's what it means to be a woman right now as a candidate in a pandemic that's running for office. But at the end of the day, it's doable. And again, as long as you have supporters like Amanda, Ross, Run for Something, and all the other wonderful organizations that's there to prop us up and to help us out, then when women run, the fact is we win.
I love that. Christina, Jess, Mayra, anything else you would add there?
Yeah, I just want to say, and I want to say hi to Julie, who is a wonderful member of the legislature in my home state of North Carolina. I think I absolutely agree with everything Jennifer said, and it is harder, and it does take more work, and there are double standards, and don't get me started on electability, or I'll be here for the rest of the night. But I do want to leave people with a moment of hope, and something that you can do to help, which is that we still live in a world where most of the media is controlled by white men, right? We still live in a world where when people think of candidate, too often they think of a dude in a suit. But I think that's changing, and that's changing thanks to people like Jennifer Carroll Foy, like Julie Von Hafen, like all of those women who came out and, they marched and then they ran and they said, maybe I don't have the right kind of experience the establishment wants, but I'm going to run anyway. And they won, and they are doing amazing things in office. And so to me, I was so glad to hear from Amy Klobuchar. Like Amanda, I worked for Hillary Clinton and I loved her. But, and I am sad that we won't have a woman president, but you know what? Those women up on stage made a difference for every little girl who can look up and say, I can run too. And I think that's true at every level of the ballot. And so that's something that what we can all do is lift all of those women up. It so matters, is call out when someone says something like a woman is shrill, or, all of the things. They call out what a woman's wearing or things like that. They use a double standard. They talk about authenticity or likability or all the coded words that we use against women. When they do that, we can help call it out, and we can lift up those women, and we can make it so it's a normal thing. So when you think candidate, you think Jennifer Carroll Foy. And that's something that I think we all can help with.
Jess?
I think we're actually in a really inspiring moment. We've been playing patriarchy whack-a-mole in trying to get women elected since we started. The goalposts keep moving. That's why we have to keep doing that. More or less, we've beaten back likable. I think when someone says likable, pretty much anybody knows what that's saying now. And then authentic pops up, and then we deal with that, and then it's electable, and then we deal with that. The thing is, we keep winning anyway. It is harder to run as a woman. You do deal with more. It is harder to legislate as a woman, and we win anyway. And now we're at a point where women are actually more likely to win in competitive seats than men are. So despite the fact that we have all of the challenges, that we face all of the challenges that we do, they do not offer actual concrete obstacles. It's just something awful that we all have to go through in order to get the win. But as long as you stand up and do it, as long as you have the support of organizations like Run for Something, it can happen, and it does happen, and it will keep happening. And as long as it keeps happening, the rest of the world will eventually have to fall in line, because it will simply be the new reality. This opportunity is such an important one, because as this crisis is highlighting all of the inequities that have always existed in our economy, it is the women in office who are leading the charge on paid sick leave, on universal childcare, on ending gender discrimination in pay, on family leave, on all of the things that it is very, very obvious that we need desperately right now. It's the women who are stepping up to do it. That will cause the next cycle of women to run. That will cause the next cycle of women to win. That will cause the next cycle of women to do good things. And the whole thing just repeats until we control the world. So we are in, there are lots and lots of challenges, but we are in a better moment with more opportunity than I have seen in my career of trying to get women elected. And I just, many celebration for that.
And Mayra? You gotta unmute yourself, my friend. I got you.
Sorry. I just want to uplift what the delegate said, because I think that in the time we're in, it's hard to remember just how much progress women have made, and yet how much more we still have to go. And so I off the top of my head, I only know the numbers for Latinas, but when the delegate said you can't be what you can't see, Latinos make up 18% of the population. And of that 18%, there's only 1% of Latinos that are elected officials. Of that 1%, less than 40% are Latinas. And so when we're thinking about not seeing representation, that's also then becomes this imagined obstacle that women internalize. And we've done candidate trainings all over the country. And the question that comes up time and time again is, well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not well-versed in this policy. I have an accent when I speak, X, Y, and Z, all of the reasons why not to do it. And so when we do candidate exercises, there are definitely real systemic obstacles for women running, but one of the big ones is the imagined obstacles that we've internalized. And again, because we haven't seen people like us in positions of power, and just in Virginia, I mean, it wasn't until 2017 that we elected the first Latinas ever to the oldest governing body in our country, 2017. And in 2018, like if we thought that was bad, we never had a Latina member of Congress from the state of Texas until 2018. Now we have two, Veronica Escobar and Sylvia Garcia. But when we think about like why we have internalized this, it's like you think of a state like Texas, how many national leaders, Latino national leaders are from Texas? Julian Castro was running for president, the highest office in the land, from Texas. And yet before 2018, we had never had a Latina. So again, I think that we are making such great strides. There are still so many states, so many districts where we've never elected a Latina to office. And so I echo all of the sentiments. If you have that seed, that curiosity, explore it, because I assure you, when we're dealing with male candidates, as soon as that idea is in their head, they go for it. Whether or not they're ready, they go for it. And we question ourselves much more than we should.
That is exactly right. We have like 30 questions in the queue. I know we're at 9 o'clock, so I want to do a real quick around the horn, so to speak, in like one tweet's worth of words or about what's the one thing you think people aren't paying enough attention to, whether it's good or bad. Jess, we'll start with you.
Oof, put me on the spot. I think that right now people aren't paying enough attention to the need to have vote by mail national. It's starting to happen, but as we see them looking to defund the post office and do other things that will make it more difficult for us to participate in the democratic system in November, that is the thing that keeps me up at night, because I do believe that we can win. I do believe that we will win in this moment, but we need to make sure that our access to the ballot is 100% ironclad in order to do the work that we need to do. So we have to win and protect the means by doing it at the same time, but I think we're up to the challenge. Sorry, that was several tweets.
Great. Mayra.
Undocumented immigrants. I know Ijin brought this up, but when we're thinking about the people who are literally ensuring we have food on the table, the domestic workers who are cleaning the hospitals, who are cleaning your apartment buildings, who are making sure that we are safe, we are not taking them into account. And we have to remember folks who are undocumented oftentimes don't have a paper trail. And so when we look just a couple months ahead, how many lives will have been lost to coronavirus, and how many people outside these folks' families will know about it because there isn't a paper trail? And what systems are we putting in place to support these communities, because it's not in the federal stimulus package currently?
Oh, that's such a good one. Piper?
I want to echo what Jess said and say vote by mail. I think one thing that people are not as conversant on is their state secretary of state. And a lot of the states that have things that are preventing you from absentee voting, you can push on your secretary of state. So just like you reach out to your members of Congress and your state legislators, put your state secretary of state on that list of people that you send emails to and calls, and push on them to make sure that we have access to the ballot for all these primaries and in November.
Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you. I would have to say, because I'm so verbose, vote by mail is really important. Trump wins because Democrats, we listen to science and we'll stay home, and Republicans will show up and he will win by default. So vote by mail is so important. And so we have to put an emphasis on that and lean in on all of our states to ensure that's done. And it scares Republicans. That's why Trump said, if we have vote by mail, Republicans never win. And you're right. So vote by mail. And the second one is paying attention to our most vulnerable populations, prison populations, undocumented immigrants, and minority communities, specifically African-American communities, who are bearing the brunt of this COVID-19 and dying at alarming rates. And there's not a sense of urgency that needs to be there to protect these people. They are voiceless and they need someone who will be their voice. And so I can do that. We all can do that and lean in on our legislators and hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable, which is something that's really important. And the last thing would be to really honor the heroes of this pandemic, which are our healthcare professionals. My sister is an RN. She goes to work every day without PPE, and she has a 1-year-old. And it almost brings me to tears to know how courageous she is, willing to sacrifice her life and her safety every single day, because there's people who need her. And I worry and I'm scared to death, but those are the sacrifices and things that people are doing. And when you really talk about heroes, people running into the fire when we're all running away from it, it's those people. And so really honoring them and lifting them up right now is just so important, and doing everything we can do to help protect the people who are protecting us. So thanks.
Thanks. Thank you for what your sister's doing. Jen, like 2 tweets worth of words here.
I think we should be talking more about how we support caregivers, about both families, parents, family caregivers who are caring for the elderly, and the professional child care workers and elder care workers who are keeping everybody safe right now and every day. We have a huge opportunity to support them in a whole new way, and that's what we should be doing. And I'm counting on Run for Something candidates to get with it.
We're gonna try. Christina?
+1 to all of the above, but I'll throw a different issue in just to mix it up a little, which is that our reproductive freedom has been under fire for the entire Trump administration and longer before that. But Republicans are now using this as an excuse to do away with abortion. And I think we all need to keep an eye on that. In certain states, that situation is dire. And so write your state legislator members, run for something and change your state legislature. And let's all pay attention to it.
And finally, Randi?
Okay, ditto, ditto, ditto. Is that 240 characters? I would say that we are not lifting up the gazillions of moments of heroism and gratitude that you see every single day, from people wearing masks so that they protect each other, to the grocery workers who smile, to the healthcare workers. Like the delegate said, it's not just my members, 200,000 of them. Every single day I worry about my sister, who is a intensive care pediatrician and physician at Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx and whether or not she'll, protect herself enough. We all feel it. And it's this notion of how do we lift them up and care about them. And the second thing I would say, I know this is 2 tweets, is that whichever issue we care about, if we don't win the 2020 elections, then we're not long-term going to deal with all of these things. Trump will constantly make it about himself and the fight. We have to make it about all the people who we all have spent so long caring about. And that's why we are running to try to make a better America, because of what all of you and all of us are trying to do. So not to get distracted by Trump and be fixated and focused on how we change America by voting in an election where we can actually vote.
That was so powerful. I'm going to use moderator's privilege here and share my personal thing. I think it's so easy right now to say that politics doesn't matter, that politics can take a back seat, that there are so many other priorities and things to invest your time, your money, your resources, your attention to. Make sure, and I know everyone who's joining this from home knows this, but make sure to get the word out and to share this with your networks. Politics is one of the reasons that we got into this mess. It's what made this crisis worse. And if we don't pay attention to it now, if we don't invest in the candidates, the organizations, the activists that are doing this work now, some of them might not be here to do the work for November. Some of them might not make it past November. So I'm going to use that as my careful segue into, if you're able to give to Run for Something again, we appreciate whatever you can do. We're doing 2 more of these, tomorrow night and Thursday night, and we're really excited about the lineups. They're just as hopeful and just as inspiring. It'll make you feel just as good about this as tonight's conversation. Thank you to Randi, Christina, Jen, Piper, Jennifer, Jess, Mayra, Senator Klobuchar, and Secretary Clinton for joining this evening. Thank you to all the nearly 300 people who did, and have a good night, everybody. Thank you.